Aisha, so as you can see right from the background, this is where we are today. The Ministry of Finance, where we are expecting that the delegation from the International Monetary Fund would, as part of their engagements, continue meetings with officials of the ministry this morning. Yesterday, upon arrival, per the schedule that Joy News has intercepted, we know that, for instance, the Office of the Vice President was engaged as part of the preparatory meetings for today's main agenda. It appears that from the schedule, today is the D-Day where, of course, the IMF officials will be starting off by delving into our data. So they're starting off, first of all, with the issues of data reconciliation by, first of all, understanding our economic outlook. Once they have a firm grasp of what it is that's on our books, then from there, we're setting that, of course, the team can then go on and engage other stakeholders before that final plan from the ministry in terms of the letter of intent from the government of Ghana is released. I'll just take you through briefly what we know may happen today. In fact, that meeting, as we are speaking, is scheduled to happen at 10 o'clock. So any moment from now, or even as we are speaking now, there are signs and indications that officials of the ministry are preparing, just awaiting the arrival of the IMF delegation so the conversations can start. It appears that top on that agenda is the first of all the issue of our economic outlook. The IMF team, per the schedule that we have, will be interested in knowing what the government projections are and what strictly the targets are for our government, and then move into the area of our expenditure. It appears that that's a key concern for the IMF team, a reason for which obviously the government is turning to the IMF. So they'll start off by assessing some of the revenue measures and expenditure cut measures that we're taking just by ourselves as we roll on to this austerity measure. So the government policy of a 30% cut in public expenditure is where they're starting off from, to assess if indeed the officials of the ministry were able to enforce that across all of the public institutions. You know that that directive was given by the finance minister a couple of months back. Obviously, the IMF team will want to look into that and then assess if indeed these expenditure cut measures have been efficient. There's also the issue about government's key revenue measure, the electronic transactions levy. Government was targeting it 4 billion, over 4 billion, which they hope will shore up our revenue measure. That is also on the table for discussion today, per the schedule that we've seen so far. That meeting will be extensive, so it will be happening between a 2-hour period. So the expectation is that that revenue measure of the E-levy will be assessed by the IMF team. They'll be assessing that because government is obviously seeking to rake in some revenue from that revenue measure. As the money research, for instance, is pointing out already, government was not able to meet that revenue target. As we're learning from that research work, about 83% of Ghanaians have changed their attitude towards the transactions online and electronically. So that would definitely mean that government may have some difficulties in terms of making a case for the e-levy as a sustainable means of raking in revenue. But we never know what the outcome will be. We're still on the lookout for that. And then next as well on the agenda will be the issue of some critical key sectors where government normally rakes in significant amounts of forex issues about the cocoa sector. That would also be on the table from the schedule that we have. And then there'll be the focus on our oil revenue and what we're using it for, and the rest. That's where the big concern is also coming up from. Because if you look at some of the flagship programs that government is running, including the likes of the free senior high school policy, it relies heavily on oil revenue. Will the IMF team, looking at our books now, call for a revision of that policy? We never know what the implications will be, but looking at the fact that we've spent over 7 billion just over a period of 5 years already on such a policy, it is likely that that may come up strongly, a recommendation from the IMF team asking for a revision of some of these critical measures. And then there's also the issue about the public sector and issues relating to payment of salaries and compensations. It's one of the key areas which has obviously affected the state's budget and issues relating to our expenditure. If you take a look at what's happening on the labor front right now, the conditions of living the cost of living allowances is one of the main demands that the labor unions are advocating for. Whilst they are making that demand, it appears that even how much alone we're paying in the public sector in terms of salaries and employment and recruitment and all of these issues, they have equally been a drain on the budget. So we're not clear what the implications will be for the public sector and their latest demands. But from the table that we have here, Aisha, it appears that the issues of salaries would also come up strongly. So these are some of the key issues that are scheduled to feature when that meeting happens. And you can see some officials already passing by, getting ready for that engagement to start in a few minutes from now.
Who are supposed to be in
see
this?
What the outcome will be, but it's a long engagement, long deliberations. If you look at the list of technical persons that the Finance Ministry and the IMF have lined up, it appears that this will be a long day, and Joy News will definitely keep an eye on the developments and bring you the latest in terms of what it is that we have on the negotiations that are opening with the International Monetary Fund.